Well, I think first and foremost is that all NAM members are actually UN members. And not only, two-thirds of UN, they constitute two-thirds of the UN membership. So there is significant alignment. As was so brilliantly explained a few days ago, I think it was The Nation and Vision also carried it by the Uganda's ambassador to the UN. The need for NAM arose because countries felt that they needed to find some sort of middle path and not be drawn into the politics of the major powers, so to speak. NAM started after the Korean War, when it became clear that we were heading towards a bipolar war at the time. And at that time also, many of the countries of Asia were becoming independent, and Africa also soon followed. So there's been this need of a group of nations to find some way of navigating the geopolitical challenges of the time. I think following the end of the Cold War, we had less of NAM, but arguably it's very important again for nations to get together.
The key agenda of this summit is going to focus on climate change and peace and security, among others. And of course, we would like you to share your thoughts on what resolutions and commitments you'd like to see emerge from this very summit.
I think these are the issues of today. So they will be talking about the issues of today, and peace and security. We cannot ignore the wars that we're facing, not just some of the smaller regional wars that have been going on for some time, but also wars that have potential of being amplified to a much broader scale. I think two of the key ones is, of course, the tensions, the wars that we have in Ukraine, the war that we now see in the Middle East and the tensions that is creating. There are also tensions in the South Asia Sea. There are tensions in many places. So I think it's important for these group of countries to see how they can mitigate that, because when we have situations of conflict, we are not advancing on our development agenda. Climate change is also critical, because I think now, while 20 years ago people might have said they're not sure what the impact of climate change may be, now we all have lived experience of the negative impacts of climate change, especially in countries, in many NAM countries, many of them developing nations. And of course, the development agenda overall is really struggling. We did the global SDG report last September, and it's very clear that we're not doing well. We're only 12% on target of what we wanted to be. 30% has gone back, we've regressed, and the rest is struggling in the middle somewhere. So we really are struggling. And on the development agenda, there are many aspects that I think NAM countries really should be discussing. First and foremost, financing. We're not finding the money that we need to find. Of course, we've suffered from global pandemic. COVID really did stress the global financial situation. But regardless, we need to find ways of unlocking the money. And increasingly, we are understanding that the infrastructure, the global financial infrastructure we have in place, is not fit for purpose. Unfortunately, it's unable to do that which it was created to do. And so I think it's important for NAM countries to really think about how they will mitigate some of these challenges.
The implementation of the resolutions that have been taken by the UN in as far as tackling climate change is concerned have not been implemented. What could be the reason?
All of these things is a question of I guess, political will, trying to get nations. It's not easy to make many of these, to take these decisions at a political level. So on climate change, there are many different aspects to it, but among the two key aspects, first and foremost, we need to limit the emissions that we're making. And these emissions are being made by the use of fossil fuels. This is what we know. We buy gas, we buy petrol, we burn them. It gives us energy. We use that energy to power our industries, to power our homes, to power our lives. It's everywhere, to power our cars. And these emissions are beginning to, they've reached a level where they're beginning to cause real problems. So we need to reduce the emissions. We need to reduce our dependence of fossil fuels. But changing that is not easy, because for us to be able to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels, we need alternatives. We have not yet the alternatives.
And also, let's look at the theme of this NAM summit.
I think what's important there is we are facing a world of geopolitical tensions recently. And within that world, I think it's very important that you have a group of nations that come and say, no, we don't want to be drawn necessarily into the politics of anybody. We want to focus on outcomes that will further our collective development. I think that's important. So them coming, and NAM is a very interesting organization, because it's non-institutionalized. There's no secretariat anywhere. Basically, each country comes, they agree on certain principles, on certain ideas, etc. And then they take those ideas back into the other mechanism. Well, they take it home themselves and try to implement it, and take it back into the other mechanisms that we have and further it. So it's not a non-institutionalized organization. But I think it's important for them to come and agree on how they will tackle some of these big challenges that we face today.
Your final word in as far as the cooperation between the UN and NAM is concerned, and also your final word to the viewer of UBC TV.
I think in the final word, NAM really is about the members. It's the members of the UN's role. Is that what's interesting is that the agenda of the UN and the agenda of NAM, there's significant overlap. But in NAM, for instance, only 2 entities from the UN are invited to NAM, and that's the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly. So individual agencies, funds, programs are not part of NAM normally. So you don't have UNDP invited to NAM. You don't have UNESCO invited to NAM. I think in this case, IOM might have been invited. So they would invite heads of funds and programs that can contribute to a specific agenda. But generally, it's really at the political level and really for the member states. I'm just looking forward to, at this time, there are many challenges. The peace and security challenges are huge. The development challenges, and within development challenges, I also categorize the climate change challenges, are very big. We have a multilateral system that is struggling to be fit for purpose, to be honest. The structures are not speaking to today's world. They're not always speaking they're not always up to the task of responding to today's challenges. So what I expect from a body such as NAM is to, while deliberating on these issues, finding ways of addressing some of these challenges of the structure that we find in today's world.